What is up, Kings? I hope all is well. I wanted to have a brief discussion about dating older women. It's not something that everybody does, obviously, but it is something, especially nowadays, that is more and more possible, dare I say, required, because of how backed up and transformed the modern dating world has become. And that was the whole point of feminism, was to invert traditional norms and culture in society. But I'm not going to veer too much into that. That's a different segue topic. So I just my thoughts on dating older women. So as a Christian man, if you're going to do it, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with spending time with an older woman to like practice your skills and abilities, for lack of a better way of calling it, with women. But I think overall it's probably a waste of time, because unless you are having sex, and if you're a Christian you should not be, unless you're having sex, there's really no point to it, because ultimately I don't think you should end up marrying that person. And what I mean by older women is, I would say 30 is like the cusp of it. Like it's bordering on, for me, 30 would probably be too late. That is too late. But I've done previous videos where I've discussed how, unfortunately, what red pill channels get wrong is, based on your worldview, which can determine how you view the need to be in a relationship or not, marriage, the whole 9 yards, and based on your sexual marketplace value, you might not have any choice but to date and ultimately marry a woman that, all things being equal, if you had your pick of the lot, you probably would not. So that's my thought coming from the Christian perspective, is it's probably a waste of time for her and for you, so on and so on. If you're not a Christian man, which, of course, a lot of people are, some people are not. I can see an avenue, and I would not advocate for this, but I can see an avenue in which you would partake in order to, have sexual dalliances, sexual exploits. But that's it. That's as far as it should go. Again, the rest of the stuff still applies as with the Christian, as far as, your sexual marketplace value, what you can command on the market and things like that. But the main point of the video that I want to discuss, regardless of being Christian or not being a Christian, the pros and cons of dating an older woman, which are basically the same thing as dating a younger woman. It's just the minutia is, when you date a younger woman, you are far more likely to consider that woman for marriage because she is fertile and, less scarred and run through and caramelized and, the whole 9 yards was the word I was looking for. But the thing is, and so the main thing I want to discuss is what you would get by and large with dating older women. And I can speak from this anecdotally primarily. Before I became an Orthodox Christian, I dated older women, and even still now, like I'll hang out with older women. I haven't done so as much, but every man does enjoy the company of a woman. But ultimately, I always come to the conclusion, like, I could have sex with her, but because I'm not going to, it's a waste of her valuable years and time, and it's a waste of mine, because I know if I were to proceed, I know that she would likely get hung up on me, and I wouldn't want to do all that. But the thing when you date older women is you get, and older women, I didn't answer this before, I would consider like 33 and above. I think some people would probably say 35, maybe some guys would say 40. Just for me, I'd say 33 and above. I would consider, she is officially past her prime, and she has less time in this kind of like semi-youthful, young woman lifespan. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty, especially today's day and age, and especially with white women, Asian women, there are plenty, especially in like suburbia and things like that, older women that are super attractive. I see it all the time for their age. Nothing beats a young woman, but for their age, it's not bad at all. The thing that you get when you date these women is you get a very masculine, usually ambitious woman. And usually, from my experience and what I see, these women kind of know that they're past their prime. And so they're just like, fuck it. I'm going to go after, the youngest, most attractive man that I can go after, to fulfill whatever, that fulfills, whatever desires that fulfills. And, but you have to understand the reason why they are 33 and above and still single, even if they were once married before or not, the reason why they are 33 and above and single is because they are masculine. They bought into the feminist lie. They, a majority of the time, are taking on this bad bitch mentality. I don't need no man, but I'd like to have a man, usually as far as like filling up the pussy and things like that. That's the extent of it. But I don't need no man. I have my own house. I have my own situation, which, by the way, there are, like, I can see some positivities to that. Like, I'm not going to lie. I can see some positiveness to a woman having her own thing, and you as a man not having to necessarily worry about that and have to be inundated with all that. But ultimately, that only lasts so long, because even if the woman has bought into the feminist lie and she's masculine and what have you, sooner or later, if she has been with you long enough as a man and you're semi-masculine, by way of that being the case, she will start to degrade degrade might be the wrong word, but transition back little by little into her more feminine role. And ultimately, women want relationships. And ultimately, they do want, whether they consciously admit it or not, they do want a man that will protect and provide. So with an older woman, you have a longer period that's the case, where you might have those positive things where she has her own thing and you have your own thing. But in the end, eventually, sooner or later, she will want those added traditional benefits, paying for this and that, but she don't pay for shit for you. The whole traditional norms. The downside, obviously, is she is past her prime. you as a man are getting the short end of the stick because she, at most can have one more kid, maybe two, if she's lucky, if you're lucky as a man. But ultimately, because of her mindset, she probably won't even, desire that quick enough to make it happen. So, but overall, you're going to be with a woman who is masculine. She's ambitious for a woman. She's got her own thing. She spends a lot of time on her own thing. She's basically a dude with tits. That's what it is. And kind of what happens is, like, for these women will like trade back and forth between like masculine and like more like beta men, because what happens is their hindbrain wants the masculine, strong, leaning towards alpha tendencies, leader guy. That's what they find attractive. But then when that inevitably doesn't work, because the same things that make that man attractive also makes him have boundaries and say, you know what, we're done with this relationship. The woman realizes this truth, and it's so rough for her to understand that she, decides to go with more beta guys. Like, oh, I'm gonna, they might even turn towards women at that point, because they're running out of options. So, this isn't like a massive thing. And I think as a man, if you are a guy that is primarily dating older women or attracted to older women, that you are probably more beta, honestly. And my recommendation would be to work on that. Now, a lot of these guys are like blue-pilled feminists, and they want to serve the woman, and so they probably don't care. But eventually they'll get tossed out on the street like the piece of garbage that they are to the woman. And honestly, even to, I like to stick up for men when I can, but that beta shit is fucking ridiculous. But that beta shit is fucking ridiculous. Hey, yo, get off that beta shit. No. So it's just, I'm a beta. So that's just what it is. Like, it's nothing crazy. This is not rocket science. I'm not saying that you shouldn't date older women or consider it at all. But I'm more discussing this from all things being equal. And, you have choices. You have the ability to make some sort of selections. These would be some of the things that you would deal with. And again, like, if you're not a Christian man, which I highly advocate that you would become, I can definitely see, a gym bro that, and I know this because I have older women talk to me at the gym all the time. And I'm not even the biggest gym bro in the world, but like, if you're like a major meathead gym bro, and you're not Christian, I can see how fulfilling, the desire to be around a woman and the woman's touch, the whole 9 yards, you would fulfill that. I can see how that would be possible, and dare I say, in some ways, even desirable, preferable. So, but again, older women, 9 times out of 10, are going to be hyper masculine. They're you're going to come across women that like run their own business, that fucking probably have their own place. They fucking they're very aggressive in their demeanor. They might even be like, slightly feminine in their presentation, but as far as like them dealing with people, it's very masculine. And therefore them dealing with you as a man will be very masculine. And so, I guess the only way that you could do this is if you're totally either A, you're a beta, or B, you're not a beta, but you're so detached, and you're like, you know what, I don't care. And this might even just be like preferable overall, regardless. But you're just like, I'm not going to argue with you. Okay, fine. You want to do this? You don't want to hang out this night? Fine. I'll low key find somebody else to hang out with. Oh, okay. You're busy this. Oh, okay. You got to run your business. Oh, okay. But under no circumstances do you start running errands for her. Because then you are stepping into her masculine frame, and that never works, because women being masculine is unnatural, and men being feminine is unnatural. So it never works. So like I said, the only way I can see is if you're like detached, and you're basically purely in it for like the physical, maybe like social elements of being around a woman. So beware, guys, beware. There's a lot more single older women out there. I see it all the time, and yeah, some of them are in good shape, whatever the case may be. But you got to be careful, and I think this situation, this topic actually like brings up the question for you as a man, like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a family? Are you, what are your goals in dating? Now, ultimately, and I've made videos on this, if you're not a Christian, I don't really see what the point of marriage would be, and honestly, you can make the extension. I'm not sure even having kids would be the best idea. Now, we are under a population decline, and there's a lot of other things to consider when having this discussion, and I'd much rather have an atheist man and woman have kids than, these LGBTQ parents adopting kids. But, so I know I dove off into the weeds a little bit here with regards to like asking yourself, what do you want? And I actually think that this question will lead most men to Christianity, because they will realize that it is natural for them to want to sire children and have a little kingdom that they bring up, and eventually that will lead them towards God, because those are godly things to participate in. All right, guys, we've taken all the meat off the bone. We've taken all the meat off this bone. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. The channel continues to grow. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. Just to end this video, and I've talked about this before, I always find it funny. There's always people, especially when I do like a contentious video, especially when it has to do with women. So this might be one of those videos. There will be these betas that come into the comments and they go, life is a Chad. And I'm like, dude, I've said this before. That is the reason why I named the channel I did, because I knew that it would get guys like that, their panties in a fucking bunch, and women for that matter. It would get their panties in a bunch. It is tongue in cheek. It is, I've said before, it is, making fun of, or making light of the manosphere, red pill type stuff. Do I think I'm the biggest Chad in the world? Of course not. I also think, and know, based on my experience, I've done just fine in my life. I'd still, compare myself and feel pretty safe and confident with the majority of men. Being 6'1", being a former Division I athlete, and things like that. But, still, it's like, guys, relax, take it easy. for me, the biggest thing is don't you have any actual like argument for the dialogue that was presented in the video? If not, fucking hit the road, Jack. Hey, hit the road, Jack. So anyways, guys, all right, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you kings next time. Last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow and fox our feelings because your feelings just don't matter. Love you, kings. See you guys next time. Christ is king. Peace.